everybody, welcome to our second workshop. My name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our second workshop. I am pumped for you to experience our guest speaker later on this evening. But before we get started, I want to touch up on a couple of quick points. So you are starting your mentor relationship. That is awesome. Hopefully you've had your first conversation. I'd love to learn about it. Post maybe about some of the key talking points that you've had for your first meeting in the comment section. Would love to learn about how that first meeting has gone. But yeah, this workshop's all about how to network in a genuine way and really make the most out of it. This workshop should be about an hour long. As a reminder, I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Once we have asked those questions, I'll expect you to answer them. That's how you get credit for participating and being here at the workshops. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker tonight. I'm really excited to dive into this. Now, this is what's really key. I mean, genuine networking is such a pivotal component to building rapport, to getting job offers, to getting promotions. Really, if you can hone this skill, if you can hone this ability, you will be set professionally, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your hard skills, that being your ability to crunch numbers, to do some form of engineering, to do some form of science, like all those things are pretty good. They're very easy to measure. So it's very clear whether or not you are better or worse than somebody on a hard skill. But your soft skills are much more difficult to measure. But those soft skills are really what's going to set you apart. I mean, as they say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And this is the workshop about how you can know more people and have a stronger bond with them, because then it goes to your reputation. Because if you have a reputation for treating people like garbage, you're not going to have a great reputation. People are going to want to help connect you with other people. If you come in with low energy, if you come in with a bad state, if you come in talking trash about other people, you're not going to put yourself in a good position. And so I want to be very clear. When it comes to networking, when it comes to building a relationship, it is not all about the transaction. If you're coming into a networking situation, you're thinking to yourself, what is in it for me? You are not going to have a positive outcome. I promise you on that. I really want to be clear. It's not all about landing the job or the internship. Sometimes it's about building the relationship and then playing the long game, because ultimately that may turn into an opportunity because they've built a rapport with you. But if you burn them, or if you make them feel like you are using them to get to a location that you would like to be, they can smell that on you. They can smell it from a mile away. And that is not great. As they say, desperation reeks. You do not want to be desperate. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's a user or a taker. You want to be a giver. You want to be someone who gives energy to relationships. The first place to start is being genuine with how you talk to people and how you build rapport with people. Now, this is something we talked about last time, but it is so important, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. That is honing your strategy, your story, and your state. As we've said before, your state is most important. So physically, how are you? Physically, what is going on with your world? Physically, I don't care what is happening. If you recently broke up with your significant other, if your dog just died, if you got some bad news, I don't care what's going on. If you get up, if you shake it out, if you let it loose, you will get yourself into a positive state. So I want to challenge you to do that right now. I want you to get up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're releasing blood to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. If you're just sitting there on a couch or in a chair in a slumped over position, your likelihood of retaining any of the information we talk about tonight is severely diminished. But if you come in standing up, moving around, getting your blood flowing, you are much more likely to retain this information. Have you ever found it difficult in a classroom setting to remember what your professor says if you've been sitting for 3 hours? That's why 3-hour lectures really struggle to work. They're not very effective because people are not moving around. Your brain needs blood to retain information. So get up, get moving, get out, get loose. Now, the second key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? I promise you right now, you will achieve up to the goals that you set for yourself in life and no higher. So you might as well shoot for the stars and land on the moon than shoot for the moon and end up in nowhere. Because if you are not focused about where you want to be, or really having a big, hairy, crazy, audacious goal for yourself, what are you doing? Like, are you just saying to yourself, like, I'm cool with winding up short, with, settling down and just settling for everything in my life? If that's the case, this program's not for you. I can tell you that right now. This program is not for you if you're trying to settle. But if you're someone that wants to go for it, if you want to go big, if you want to go out there for the opportunities that you want to see in your life, this program is absolutely for you. Let this program be a springboard. Let your mentor be a Sherpa that's guiding you up this mountain of life and success and help you get to where you want to be. This is someone who wants to guide you, that wants to help you. They wouldn't have signed up for this program if they weren't interested in seeing you succeed. So I want to be very clear with you. What is the story for why you will be successful? Understand that, hone it, be prepared. In fact, I would challenge you to write this down. Write it on a piece of paper. It's more likely to stick in your mind if you write it on a piece of paper of where you want to be. Stick it up on your wall. Stick it up on your desk. Stick it up on your dresser. Stick it up on your mirror. Something that's going to remind you of where you want to be in 1 month, 3 months, 1 year from now. That will help you set the target of where you want to go. Because if you don't set these goals, you're going to be on a path that's got really no clear outcome of where you want to go. So the last part is your strategy. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a big believer in routines. When I say routines, I mean literally getting into a daily habit that you can practice regularly so then you can be better at a skill. We think about habits sometimes in a negative light because we think about people just being addicted to bad actions, but I believe that habits can also be attributed in a positive light as well. What is a positive habit you can get into to help you build more genuine relationships? I believe one thing you can do is to be intentional about having an informational interview every single week with a new person, with a new professional in your field. You can leverage LinkedIn. You could go to a professor's office hours. You could talk to a friend of yours whose parent works in the field that you're interested in working towards, or a family friend that you know works in the field that you're interested in working towards. If you set up one informational interview every single week, and by an informational interview, I want to be very clear. This is a conversation. This isn't an interview. You're not trying to get a job from this person. You're just trying to get knowledge about what this work is like. Set up one of those a week. I can promise you they're going to start making introductions for you. They're going to start helping you get to where you want to be. By the way, if your goals change over time, that's okay. That's totally okay. You can share with them how your goals have changed. They're going to want to keep helping you over time. I'll give you a perfect example of this. As an entrepreneur, I set goals all the time. I have a board of mentors. I literally have about 50 to 100 mentors that I send once every 3 months an update of what's going on with the business. Here's the thing though, I've pivoted this business many, many times. Now, initially when I first got started, I was thinking to myself like, oh, well, they're my mentors. Like, if I tell them that I pivoted, will they think I'm a total failure? Will they not want to help me anymore? What I found is that is absolutely not the case. They're always there to support me. Mentors that have been with me for 5+ years still give me guidance, still help make introductions, still help me out and support me as my mission has grown, as my goals have grown. That is the nature of mentoring relationships. That is the nature of relationships in general. You should keep your network up to date with what is going on in your world because they will want to see you succeed. But the key is that you ask them for something specific. When I meet with my mentors or when I send them an email, I ask for something very, very specific. I don't say, hey, if you know anybody in XYZ space, if you could introduce me, would love that. Why? Because it's not at the top of their mind. What I'll do is I'll physically go onto their LinkedIn profile, look at who they're connected with and say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with Jane Doe, John Doe, Shelby Doe, and Jenny Doe. I know that you may not be connected with all 4 of those people, but if you are connected with one of them, would you mind introducing me? Here's an email template that you could copy and paste to introduce me. Now I've made it extremely specific and easy for them to take an action step to help me out. And that is how you can continue to grow your relationships, your network, and build rapport with people. And just keep them in the loop of what's going on in your world. So I just want to be very clear. It's about building genuine relationships. And it's about when you're building those genuine relationships and then you're asking them for introductions or connecting with more people through those relationships, being very specific and making it as easy as possible for them to help you out. I really want to stress this. It's so important. Genuine networking. If you can take anything from this whole program, if it's genuine networking, and by genuine networking, I mean really listening, taking an active and keen interest in who you are speaking with, you are going to be set. You're going to be in a great position. Because at the end of the day, it's not your elevator pitch. It's not going to be anything about you that makes someone interested in you. It's going to be about your ability to listen to them. In fact, I can tell you multiple times where I didn't say a word in a conversation. I just nodded my head yes and asked questions about things that somebody else has said. And at the end of the conversation, whether that be 30 minutes or 60 minutes long, they said, man, Garrett, you are such a great conversationalist. Or, gosh, I feel like I just had such a great conversation with you. And the funniest thing about it is I didn't actually say a word. The point is this: people love to talk about themselves. Why? Because people are really interested in things that they're interested in. People wouldn't choose to spend the time that they have on this earth in the way that they did unless they thought it was the most optimum way of spending their time. Therefore, things that interest them, things that they choose to spend their time on, are things that interest them and ultimately make you interesting to them because you've taken an interest in those actions and activities. I hope that makes sense. If you want to rewatch that, take that back 30 seconds because I think it's really important. People ultimately, at the end of the day, people care about themselves. People care about things that they are interested in because they've chosen to spend the time that they have on those tasks. So with that said, I'm excited to jump in to our guest speaker this evening. Really, the whole point of this workshop is about genuine networking. By the way, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'll add you to our LinkedIn group where we discuss different topics, and just you can add different topics, ask any questions, and expand us to our entire Ambition in Motion network. Connect with me. I'll add you to the group. But yeah, I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump into our guest speaker this evening. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic, how to network in a genuine way. This is a really fascinating topic because right now we got COVID. We got a lot of virtual events. Sometimes we're starting to get into in-person events. If you are, fantastic, good for you. If not, I understand it's still a struggle. You got to make the most of it. It's difficult to set your mark. I think one of the biggest mistakes I would see a lot of students do, even in in-person networking events, is they would immediately just dive right into their elevator pitch, like as if I was that interested into who you are. In reality, as a professional, I care about myself. And so you are a lot more interesting to me when you ask questions about me than just tell me all about you. So one of the things that we're talking about today is how to network in a genuine way, how to ask questions, how can we go about building a bond and rapport and set ourselves apart to those that we're trying to make a positive impression on by asking good questions, just by being there and being authentic. Fortunately, we've got a great guest with us here today. We've got Rob Humble. Rob is the Chief Revenue Officer for his company. He's doing some incredible work. But I'm gonna stop with my little intro. Rob, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself and share with our audience a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So as you mentioned, I'm Chief Revenue Officer for IA American Warranty Group. It's a mouthful, so I'll say it for you. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. Prior to this role, I was with the same company that I'm with, but I was head of strategy and corporate development. And prior to this, I've worked in, 4 or 5 different industries. In fact, I've never worked in the same industry twice, from one role to the next. I've worked in finance, marketing, strategy, operations, and most recently sales. Oh, also corporate development. So I've spanned a lot of industries, spanned a lot of functions. And so I'm kind of constantly surveying the landscape for something new and interesting, and have followed that to a lot of different new and interesting places in my career. I have a little bit of my education. I have an engineering degree from WashU in St. Louis, and I got my MBA at Harvard Business School, and got my real education out in the real world, working for a number of companies, number of industries, and a lot of different functions. So happy to share with you what I can about networking today.
That's very cool. So, what's fascinating is you've got a really deep depth and breadth of experience. I mean, a degree in engineering, experience in sales, experience in strategy. I think for a lot of students, they have not fully understood that. I think one of the things that I was surprised to learn when I got into the professional realm and world was when I heard the term Chief Revenue Officer. Oh, I thought that this was somebody who was in charge of like finance or that sort of thing. And in reality, one of the things that I learned was that this is a lot of times leading a team of salespeople to drive the revenue in for the business. Would you mind maybe just elaborating a little bit about what it means to be the Chief Revenue Officer, just for students that are just learning about this role?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, I'm learning it's actually still a relatively new role, I think. There's always been head of sales. But Chief Revenue Officer as a role is actually much more than sales. So I do have a large team, about 250 people that work for me. And I would say the vast majority, the overwhelming, are salespeople. But I also have an organization called Sales Operations, which is support personnel for that. for the sales team. And I also manage, so I manage all revenue growth. So it's not just organic revenue growth, which is sales, but I also manage acquisitions. So I'm responsible for growing revenue in any way that we possibly can, be that through new sales, new clients, growing with an existing clients, or even buying other companies that can help us immediately grow and then potentially help us grow quicker in the future.
You know, one of the things I think a lot of students are very intrigued with, at least I'm genuinely intrigued with, is this term head of strategy. You mentioned that you were head of strategy before becoming chief revenue officer. I'm a game player. I love playing games. I think a lot of students are just, you know, whether it be board games or video games, games that have some layer of strategy in it. I guess I know that sounds, I think on the surface we like it, but I don't necessarily know if a lot of students really know what it means to be head of strategy. What I'd be curious to know is, what does it mean to be head of strategy? How does that play into the role of chief revenue officer? And then how is that different from being a chief revenue officer?
Yeah, great questions. So I would say, I believe that, frankly, every job that we do is done uniquely by the individual that's doing it. And so I can tell you what I did in strategy and what it meant to me. But full disclosure, other heads of strategy may have done this differently. So for me, I've never thought of myself as the idea guy. I've never been the guy that goes into a closet and comes out with 100 slides and a brilliant strategy. My skill set is much more in facilitating great conversations. And so as chief strategy, well, I say chief strategy officer, I've played the role of head strategy. I've never actually had that official title before, but as head of strategy in the past, I have been essentially the right-hand guy to a president of a business unit, CEO of a company, and have had responsibility for helping them really define what are the key strategic questions for the organization, and then facilitate a conversation with their leadership team about those questions and the implications of the answers to those questions on what we should do as a company. And then I think a critical part of being head of strategy is not ending there, but finding ways to engage the organization, communicate that strategy, and engage the broader organization in how to actually get it done and execute on it. If you'll allow me, I want to mention one thing I've learned through some books that I've read over the years. I believe there are two things that fundamentally set humans apart from other species on the earth, set the most successful humans apart from those that have been less successful, and frankly, the companies that succeed more than others. I think it really comes down to just two things. One, the ability to create a vision of something that does not yet exist. So the imagination, and that is oftentimes what people think of as strategy. And I think that's important. You have to be able to imagine something that doesn't exist yet. But the other part that's crucial is those that have been most successful throughout history, human history, are the ones that not only have that vision, but can motivate others to achieve that vision. And so I think, and that's where it comes into the chief revenue officer side for me is, and even actually when I was head of strategy before taking on the chief revenue officer role, I was in charge of leading acquisitions as well. And so I had the privilege of not only helping the organization to create that vision for the future, but then to actually play a leadership role in helping the broader organization understand what is that vision and what is their role in helping to achieve it, and really getting everybody excited and motivated to go tackle that hill.
That's cool. That's it sounds like a book that I'm reading right now called Sapiens.
That's the book I read.
Are you kidding me? That's so
yeah,
funny.
so actually, I'll tell you.
That's okay. Well, great minds think alike. That's pretty cool. I'm in the middle of, I mean, it's a huge, this is a honking book. This is a big old book.
Yeah.
I'm about like halfway through right now. But yeah, that's so fascinating. I'm like, he's using words that are like very much free, like human history. I'm like, this is very interesting.
So I'll tell you, Garrett, there's one other book. So since you brought it up, I'll say it. Sapiens, I would absolutely recommend. It's kind of a history on on humans and who's been successful and who hasn't and why, et cetera. But the other one that I think is totally different. Sapiens was written by, I think, a philosopher. Yeah. The other one that I think goes extraordinarily well with it, and I read it at the same time, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Great book.
And that Start With Why, which is very kind of pedestrian, very easy to read, relatively short book, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum from Sapiens. But I thought that paired with Sapiens was a really great combination of like, how do we as humans become more effective in leading other humans to accomplish outcomes?
Well, I think that's all relevant into the topic of today of how do we network in a genuine way? Because I think so often when we think about networking, at least as students, we think to ourselves like, okay, how do I get this person to do this thing for me? And I think so often if we have that mentality, it can be maybe effective on a micro level, but on a macro level, to your point of like, do we have a vision and can we motivate people to achieve that vision? You're leading a team of 200 something people. You are having to create that vision and lead them to that vision, have them buy into that. How do you do it? You mentioned something earlier about being a head of strategy that I thought was really fascinating, was that you help facilitate really great conversations. You're not necessarily saying we need to do this, but you're facilitating great conversations, then taking the data and conversations from there to make educated decisions. So how did you go about doing that? How do you go about motivating people on a meta large level?
Yeah, it's a great question. It does start with engaging leadership, and so those facilitated conversations. When I'm talking about that, I'm specifically talking about the top leadership team of the organization, generally 6 to 10 people, and so we'll have uh, sometimes annually, sometimes when I join an organization, we'll do kind of a blitz and do 2 or 3 days of an offsite, and generally, I think it's important. When you're leading a team, I try to do an offsite with my team at least once a quarter, just to spend time, as they say, thinking, they say working on the business rather than working in the business, to take a step back and actually think about the broader scope. So first and foremost, you have to get your leadership team aligned, or the people that are the recognized leaders of the organization. And then honestly, it comes down to communication. So get the word out, help people understand what the strategy is, and what their role is in helping to execute the strategy. And you really can't communicate through enough mediums with enough messages. I've heard anywhere from 7 to 10 times people need to hear something before they actually hear it. And so I think as leaders, we often assume, well, I already said this last quarter, so I need to come up with something new to say this quarter. And I really encourage people to shed that, honestly, that feeling of insecurity that like, I'm going to sound like I'm a dummy because I keep saying the same things over and over again. No. Understand that people need to hear it over and over again, and they need to hear over and over again what their role is in contributing to that, or can be. And so we'll also do, like we'll do in all hands meetings, we'll highlight and give awards to people that are living out the culture or the strategy that we're trying to spread through the broader organization. And so communication is absolutely huge, but honestly, it goes beyond communication. It goes beyond structure and strategies for communicating, I think, to the core of leadership. And for me, getting people to really follow, not just do what you ask them to do, but to do what they want to do, which happens to be consistent with what you want them to do. I think a big part of that is helping people understand, and this is a lead into the networking question, but helping people understand what's in it, like, well, not what's in it for them. That's the wrong way of phrasing it. Helping them understand that you care about them. There's a phrase that I'm probably going to butcher, so fair warning. But people don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? And so when you want someone to help you with something, to follow you, I think it's critical that they understand that you care about them as a human. And the ways that you speak to them, the ways that you treat them, the way that you engage, you ask them to help with work, the ways that you give them assignments, even the ways that you greet them in the morning when you come into the office, or greet them on a Zoom meeting as it is today. All those things say something about how you regard them as a human being. And when people feel heard, when people feel seen, they all of a sudden feel more open to what you have to say and what you want out of life. And so I find that putting people first, and really emphasizing that we're here for the health and well-being of our people, and we can achieve that for the people here and more people if we grow, if we follow this vision, and if you play your role in doing it. I think that to me is the most effective way of getting people engaged in what you're trying to accomplish as a broader organization, not because you want them to, but because they want to.
I love that. I think that makes a ton of sense. So many things that you said there that were fascinating. Well, the first one that I really loved was the frequency of the follow-up. I hear so often from students, they'll say things like, oh, I met somebody at this event. We hit it off. We did great. I sent them an email and I heard nothing back. They must be not interested in me. They must be totally fake. And it's like, no, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. Because to your point, Rob, like it may take 7 touch points to actually get you through to them. Maybe you did have a really great back and forth. Maybe you really did vibe well together, but that person may need multiple touch points because their timing, because maybe they're on the road constantly going to a bunch of different career fairs at universities across the country. They may need multiple touch points to really get through to them. And if that's the case, the person who is constantly following up is going to get the interview. As they say, the squeaky wheel will get the grease. So you need to be that squeaky wheel to get yourself out there. Now, the second thing I love that you said about getting, I think it was another way of putting it is, I think the Maya Angelou quote was, people won't remember what you said, they'll remember how you made them feel. And I think that very much is in line with what you were just saying. And at the end of the day, it's how can you go about conveying to somebody that you care about who they are as a human? I think I love that point as like on the human side. How are you doing XYZ person, as opposed to, hey, when's your next job opening? Or, when are you taking interviews? If those are the only questions that you're asking, you are essentially conveying to them that you only care about them as much as it can help you. And then no more beyond that. And people don't like that. They can see through that BS. So Rob, I'd love to ask you, what does genuine networking mean to you from just connecting with other people sense?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm very fortunate in that I just genuinely love meeting new people and learning about them and connecting with them. And I think for me, genuine networking is not showing up as if you need something from somebody, but showing up as if you can provide something to somebody. And it may sound counterproductive. It may sound like, you may actually get anxious that I'm going to like spend all this time asking them about them, and they'll never get to hear my story or what's important about me. But Garrett, you said it when you opened, man. People love to talk about themselves. And if you can get somebody talking about themselves and you can understand, so when I meet someone for the first time, particularly in a business networking environment, I'm always listening for what are they looking for? What do they need? And maybe they express that explicitly, but maybe you need to read between the lines a little bit. And the more I understand about who they are, where they came from, what motivates them, what their values are, what their why is, to use Simon's phrase, the more of those things that you understand just by being genuinely curious about who this person is and what makes them tick, the more likely it is that you're going to find something that you can help them with. And if you're helping them, you will find that, first of all, the follow-ups happen much more easily. When you're looking for something from somebody else and they're not responding, it may be just because you're looking for something from them. But if you can find a way to give them something, they will be much more interested in engaging and then ultimately reciprocating. And it doesn't have to be a long timeline either. I've had conversations where, I'm genuinely looking for a way that I can contribute to somebody else's success. And in the same conversation, it turns around and benefits me. And so I've seen this countless times. Be willing to, one thing I always say, be willing to have a conversation, be willing to share about yourself. And I'm sure we'll get into this later about authenticity and sharing and whatnot. But I often find that if you're willing to trust someone, that's how you gain trust, by extending trust. And so the more that you can just enter into it with an attitude of being helpful and curious, the more likely it is that you're going to pop out the other side with somebody that wants to engage with you and may benefit you somewhere down the road.
You know, that's so funny that you say that, because that's so true. That notion of like when you extend trust, you get it back. I mean, like you can even elaborate to like if you ask somebody for something. Now, obviously, it has to be reasonable. You can't ask somebody for something extensive. But if you ask somebody to help you with something, they're going to like you a whole lot more because you trusted them to help you with this thing. Like Rob, I came to you and said, "Hey, Rob, would you be willing to be our guest for this workshop we're running for students?" And you said, "Of course, yes, 100%, I'm in." And it made you feel a lot more connected to me because I asked you for help on this thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it doesn't even, I'll make it even easier for people though. It's um, definitely true that when you ask for help, you're being vulnerable. You're showing that I respect you and could use your insight, but it doesn't even have to be help. It could be, and I think one of the most powerful things, even if you don't necessarily need it, and this may not sound genuine or authentic, but find a reason to ask this person for advice. And not necessarily like a job or help, but like, hey, I'm really interested about how you got to where you did in your career. I feel like I'm on the front end of the same journey. Can you share with me, the things that worked well for you and the things that didn't work well? What are some of the mistakes you made along the way? What are the things that worked well? And I think when you ask someone for advice, it immediately puts them in the place of one, they get to talk about themselves, which people love, and two, generally people like helping other people. And if you can pull that ask off in the context of, I don't need to do a lot of work or spend a lot of time, but I can extend to you my wisdom in a short period of time, that I find to be the golden ticket. And for what it's worth, that applies to networking, but it also applies to people that you work with, people that work for you, particularly people that are kind of equal in rank or below. The more that you can engage people and let them know that, hey, I've got something to learn from you, not just you learning things from me. It builds a bridge and deepens a relationship extremely quickly.
That's so that's so fascinating. So the couple things, I love that perception data as like where they're at compared to you, and like your willingness to ask them for advice, especially if they think in their mind that you're above them, is such a cool paradigm shift, because then it's like, wow, this person really cares what I have to say. That's really powerful. But it just you even sharing that example makes me think back to when I was first getting Ambition Emotion started, and I was helping connect students with these hiring managers and these mentors at these companies across the country. And I'd go to these career fairs and I would meet with these different hiring managers and leaders. And I'd say, hey, what advice do you have for college students seeking to make the greatest impact and impression on a hiring manager? It could be yourself. It could be just in general. I love to learn your tips and feedback on that. And just going in with that, I think I had like 9 job offers, and I wasn't even actually seeking jobs. I was building this business. But because I was asking these questions about what students could do to best prepare themselves, it was like immediately they're like, whoa, this guy is interested in learning and they're learning from me, and I want to be around this person. So often we're not necessarily, I think one of the biggest kind of paradigm shifts that I see that's like a really big gap between higher ed and the actual working world is in higher ed, you could skip class, you could not build any relationships with anybody, and you could technically ace all of your classes. It's not tried, the system's not meant to be that way, but you could technically do that. In the working world, that doesn't work. That does not fly. You can't just do the work and not build any relationships or have any rapport with people. There is an element of relationship building that has to exist for you to thrive and succeed in your career, no matter what your grades are. So I think that's something that's really critical to think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nothing gets accomplished in the real world without people. And in fact, if you want to reference back to Sapiens, I think one of the more fascinating things is that it is those groups that were able to, it's almost survival of the fittest at the group scale. And there's another great book on that talks about evolution, organizational evolution, and how the organizations that are most collaborative, that work well together towards a vision, are the ones that succeed. I actually have a viewpoint inspired by a guy named Pat Lencioni, a business guru, author. Love this guy. And he talks about teamwork and organizational health as the only true competitive differentiator in business today, because other companies can steal your people, they can steal your products, they can steal your processes, they can take anything. But the one thing they can't take is that connective tissue between the people in your organization. They can't steal your culture, to use another phrase. And so I believe that not only as individuals do we need human connection to succeed, but only those organizations that truly embrace the human connection and embrace teamwork as a competitive differentiator, those are the ones that are truly going to thrive into the future.
Well, just even on that topic, I even think of scenarios where people can be great managers even if they don't technically know the information of what they're managing on. But if they can manage those relationships and they can manage those people, it's so powerful. I mean, one of the things that I often will see in the working world is people who get promoted based on their individual contributions. And the thought process is like, well, if this person's great in sales, even if they don't have the skills to be a good sales manager, how could they possibly respect somebody who's worse than them in sales but has all the other great management skills? And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about, can they lead a team? Even if they technically don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of the work, can they lead that team? Can they motivate them? Can they relate? Can they understand? Can they listen? I think it's so powerful.
I absolutely love that. And in fact, you're touching on one of my favorite topics in organizations and leadership and business. So some fun facts. When I took over head of corporate development 5 years ago, it's for a private equity owned company, high expectations. They wanted us to go buy, we ended up buying actually 10 companies. And when I took the job, I had never once even been involved in an M&A transaction on either side. Hadn't seen one, hadn't been involved in one, hadn't executed one, but jumped in and and it took hundreds of people to get these deals done. And so by working through other people, I learned what I needed to in order to do the job. Another interesting fun fact, I'm leading a team of 250 people, most of whom are in sales. This is literally my first job in sales. I've never worked in sales before. And so the whole job is not about how to sell more. It's about how to organize people to be successful. How do you get the right people in the right seats and get them collaborating in a way that drives the outcome that we're looking for? I'll close this comment with 2 words: Ted Lasso. If you haven't seen the show, it's absolutely worth the 1 week of free trial with Apple Plus. You can see both seasons. And Ted Lasso is a phenomenal example of pure leadership in action. He knows nothing about football or soccer as it is, but he knows about teamwork. He knows how to work egos and how to get big egos to play together. And if you want to know how to lead, regardless of experience, context, watch Ted Lasso. You'll learn a lot.
Totally agree. Huge fan. It's like there are 2 peoples in this world: people who love Ted Lasso and people who haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. I love that. Absolutely.
It's amazing. It'll warm your heart. It's a great show. Highly recommended. But I really appreciate your vulnerability there, Rob, on just saying, I've never had a sales role before, but now I'm the chief revenue officer leading this entire sales team. Let's talk about that for a moment. Authenticity, vulnerability. What role does that play in genuine networking?
Oh my gosh, it is the most important thing, I think. So we said this phrase earlier. You have to extend trust to get trust. And it's interesting. I've built a whole career, I would say, on the ability to gain trust. I'm not an expert in, frankly, anything. I got an engineering degree and never used it for engineering. I'm not an expert in finance or marketing or operations or strategy, or I'm closer in some areas than others. But what I've become, what got me to where I am in my career, is the ability to gain the trust of other people. And the way I get there is to go first. Full disclosure, it's burned me a few times. I have trusted people that violated that trust, and it hurts. And I've actually had no major setbacks, but I've had some career hiccups because I trusted the wrong people and they violated that trust. But my encouragement to you is to keep trusting, and to not become cynical because people violated that trust. The quickest way to build trust is to extend it. And the way you extend trust is by being vulnerable, by going first, by saying, I don't know how to do this. I could learn more from you about that. Or even, and Garrett, you and I have had some really good conversations one-on-one in the past. I'm even quite open about my personal life because I believe that we are whole humans, and everyone that works on my team I view as a whole human, and I am first and foremost motivated as a business leader to improve the health and well-being of the people that I work with, because I know that by doing that with the 250 people that are on my team, there are thousands of people in their families, in their churches, in their community groups, the vendors they work with, the clients they work with. Literally, by taking care of those 250 people, we can affect the lives of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. And so I'm very quick to let people know that I'm a whole human. I have many strengths, but I have many faults. I have lots of successes and I have lots of failures, both professionally and personally. And I find that by being very open about that, others will open up. And you have to be careful. So it's a dangerous game. So to be clear. And so I think one thing that's important is throw yourself in with careless abandon, but be listening and watching carefully as you go through it, because some people will not open up and some people will be closed off. And the best way to anticipate someone that will use your trust against you is someone that's not willing to open up in return. So keep that in mind as well. When someone's opening up to you, they may be looking at you through the lens of, can I trust this person long term? And the way that I do that is looking to see, will they share with me equally? And to be clear, nobody ever shares as equally with me because I share probably too much, but that's how I got to where I am in life and my career. It's worked for me.
I love that. I love that you shared that. I think that's really powerful. I love that you mentioned just be the one who's consistently trusting others. Like I live in this community and they put these silly little quotes on the community area. And one of the things that says, what it says right now is it says, better be the one that smiled than the one that didn't smile back. And I think that also applies to trust and being vulnerable and being open. You know, I guess I'd be curious, Rob, what do you say to those people that are like, oh, that's inappropriate for the workplace. You can't share, like, I can't be vulnerable out here. Like, that's, there's a difference between work and my personal life or whatever. Like, what do you have to say for people that are not comfortable with being vulnerable? And on top of that, what are some things that you have to potentially look out for those people that are not willing to be vulnerable? Because I could see there being a lot of potentially issues down the line, because if they're not willing to be vulnerable, more likely than not, they're going to cover up a lot of things that are going wrong because they don't want to take the blame, because they're not willing to actually open up and say when they made a mistake.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I got caught on that last question and I lost your first one.
Okay. The first question was, what do you say to people that are not comfortable with opening up and being vulnerable?
So there was a really great podcast that I listened to on this probably a year ago with Brene Brown, who is the queen of vulnerability. Love her. And she was doing an interview, and I can't remember whose podcast it was. It was either hers or it was on Adam Grant. So Adam Grant is another author, business professor at Wharton. Talks a lot about vulnerability and organizational health. And Adam and Brene, I am on a first name basis with both of them, so it's cool. Just kidding. No, but they, Adam and Brene were talking about this question, and Adam's question, he actually asked this question. He said, I'm a private person. Can I still be vulnerable? And Brene's response, I thought, was brilliant. She said, absolutely. It's all about boundaries. And so the way that they talked about this was, being vulnerable is about revealing an authentic self. It's not about telling everything to everybody. And so it's probably not a good idea to share certain extremely private parts of your personal life at an all hands meeting in front of 700 people, for example. But you may find a way to say, you know what, I've really been, I know that a lot of you are working hard, working long hours, and with COVID, it's been really tough. I know many of you are suffering from mental health. I'm personally really struggling with that from time to time. And I want you to know that it's something that I'm working through. These are some of the things that I think about and that I do to help me with that. And I want you to know that you've got leaders in this organization that, that also experience what you're experiencing. So two very different kinds of vulnerability. And you don't have to reveal your whole personal life in order to let people know that you're willing to share parts of you that frankly, the way I think about it, parts of you that could be used against you. And so that doesn't mean you have to share everything, but it does mean that you have to be willing to take some risk. And now I've forgotten your second question.
No, that was great. That essentially answered it.
Okay, great.
It makes me think, even as a leader, I think a lot of times, like, we're framing this in this interpersonal relationship thing, but even in a business sense, it makes sense. My best friend used to work for Uber, and back in, I think it was 2016. And by the way, I'm not the biggest fan of their then CEO, Travis Kalanick, but he did something that was really interesting. Uber had been growing like crazy, like a rocket. They're going up and up and up. In terms of revenues, things are going high, but they still have not been operationally profitable. They're still burning cash every single month. And so Travis, to his investors, said, hey, we want to raise a round J or something like that. At the time, they'd raised like a bajillion rounds of fundraising. And his investor said, hey, we're open to that, but you need to slash your operating costs by like at least 50 something million dollars. They had to make a massive cut to their operational procedures. They didn't necessarily need to be profitable yet, but they need to be darn close to it while maintaining their level of growth. And Travis wrote a memo to the entire team and said, hey, I've got no idea how we're going to do this, but we need to cut our operational expenses by $50 million. If we're not able to do that, we may not be able to exist as a company anymore. It's just, we're not going to be able to raise our funds. We're not going to be able to pay our people. We're just not going to be able to move forward. If we can hit this, I think we're going to be in for a really great growth outcome and great future margins and opportunities. But I don't have the solution. I'm leaning you all for guidance on that. And the team rallied, and they not only hit it, they hit it with like flying colors. They were able to cut out all these expenses that they were having that were operationally inefficient. And it really helped them. Now, obviously, he's made a lot of other mistakes as a leader, but that was one thing. That's a great example of where vulnerability of saying, hey, I don't have the solution. I don't know what the answer is. And I know that we are facing some potential impending doom, and I need your help to get there. If we can't do it, we're going to go over this clip. But if we can build a bridge to get to that next level.
Well, and it's such a powerful, I'll just add to what you said. It's a powerful leadership tool to not say, we need to cut 50 million and I need 10 million from each of you. Go get it. And if you don't, you're all fired. Right? So that's one that some people do that. But what he did was say, this is a problem that we have. I need your help in getting there. And by not telling them what to do, but asking for their help in how to get there, he enrolled them in the solution. And at that point, they can't balk. They can't say, well, they can't say, woe is me. This has been placed on me and I'm just going to have to execute on it. No. They had to come up with a solution. Therefore they own the solution at the end of the day. And that's so much more powerful than just telling people this is what we must do.
Love it. I just realized one thing I forgot was to ask students question while doing this recording. So I'm going to ask 3 questions to the students right now. One is, now that we've had this time to chat about genuine networking and just building authentic relationships, I love to ask you, what does that mean to you? Post in the comments section. Second question, when was a time that you were vulnerable and it worked out for you? Share us what that story was. Post in the comments section. I'd love to learn about that. And then the third question is, what do you want to commit to now so then you can start building more genuine relationships moving forward in the future? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn what your plan is. I'd love to learn what your takeaways are from this and how you're using this to propel yourself into the future. So Rob, this has been a great recording. This has been awesome. Last question, how can our students learn more about you and your work and just connect with you?
Yeah, best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Rob Humble. I think you can just type that into the search, or maybe even Google me, and LinkedIn should pop up. And if you like the conversation today, I think you'll really like my LinkedIn feed. I've converted myself to, I think I forget what the phrase is, but you can follow me now without even needing to connect to me. And I'm not particularly prolific in my posts, but I would say once every week or two, I'll post something that has inspired me on anything from philosophy to leadership to business to sports. I'm always looking for something that's inspiring to me and maybe inspiring to others. So wouldn't consider myself a content creator, but every now and then I do share my thoughts. And by the way, I'll put this out there. If you've been particularly intrigued by this conversation and you want to network with me, feel free to reach out, shoot me a note on LinkedIn. We can connect, and I'm happy to do everything I can to help. One thing that's absolutely true for me is I would not be where I am without the help of other people. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma and have had some pretty amazing experiences in life. Almost every single one of them tied to somebody being willing to have a conversation with me or take a chance on me. And so I'm more than happy to extend that to others. So find me on LinkedIn, Rob Humble, and connect with me, follow me, shoot me a message, and happy to chat.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Students, thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you at our next workshop. See you, everybody.